A supply shock could be incoming. Retail could follow in. Today we'll break it down for you. It's going to be a good one. Let's just jump into it. I do want to thank our sponsor, and that is iTrust Capital. Make sure and jump over to itrustcapital.com. You can get in on your own crypto IRA. You can roll over an IRA to get into this now. You can also get into gold, silver, so metals, as well as all the risk assets out there, including Bitcoin and Ethereum. So check it out. You guys can use our link. It's going to give you a $100 funding reward just to get started. Always consult your tax advisors as you set these up, but this is a good way to diversify. So get into it. Let's go over to a couple of points I want to lead off with. One thing to watch right now for this week, of course, is earnings week, kind of the Super Bowl of earnings. And the big ones are going to be on mostly Wednesday, even though Robinhood will be on Tuesday. You've got Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Qualcomm, SoFi in there. And then Apple coming in, Roblox coming in, Rivian in there if you want to see what's happening there. Roku will be there, and a handful of others. But the key here, I think, are mostly the tech players to keep a very close eye on, because we have seen some movement on these. And if with this many of them happening at the same week, this is the kind of scenario that we could see playing out. There's the S&P. 42% of the S&P is now reporting earnings. So almost half of the entire S&P 500 reporting this week. So if they come in with bad earnings, this could be one of the trickle components that starts to put a little pressure on the market. As you see, Microsoft dropping 5% and OpenAI, especially as they restructure their deal. This is going to put the kind of pressure, I think, on a lot of these earnings calls that are basically going to be announcing these things. So you will see activity in the market. Do we see this pull back dramatically on the S&P? That's the real question that everybody is looking at. Because remember, we're still considering the S&P 500 as potentially having a major correction. Other things you have to concern yourself with, and this is Elizabeth Warren, is the big tech is building an AI bubble. Same dangerous playbook we saw in 2008. Notice, though, she didn't mention clarity in here or crypto. So is she going to back off of that? I'm not sure. But the point is, she's out there talking about this in terms of tech companies potentially causing another major impact on the market. All right, so we've got some other news here. This, of course, is the central banks. You've got the FOMC meeting happening this week. This will be Chair Powell's final FOMC meeting. Also, the ECB and the BOE are also going out this week in terms of how the markets are going to respond in reference to rate cuts. Now, many people would say, is and will we get a rate cut this week on maybe Chair Powell's last installment of the FOMC? Well, the point is right now, 41% holding at zero. So no rate cut, no rate increase happening right now, at least on 41%. You get a quarter basis at the nearest next level, which is 29%. So there's still a little bit of possibility for a rate cut. But it'd be interesting to see if Chair Powell actually did that. I don't think there will be one, but we'll find out this week. U.S. Department of Justice has now dropped their criminal probe against Chair Powell. That was a very big issue because there are things that had to happen for Warsh to get nominated, or at least through his nomination. And this was one of them. And of course, this statement here, I think, is going to be a big one, at least moving forward. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is over yet. I want to play a clip for you. Take a look.
Where do you think about what we've come up with just in terms of all of this while we're also in the middle of earnings season?
Let me say that I don't think the drama surrounding Jay Powell is over. And we all know that he won't be chairman, and that's okay. But we know he has 2 more years that he could serve if he wants. And at that last meeting, he seemed to make it clear, unless I am exonerated, completely exonerated, I will stay on. He will be the second most powerful person there after Warsh.
Well, the criminal charges are dropped. I think he wants out.
Too.
I think he wants to get as far away as he can. I don't think he wants to be a thorn in the side like a gadfly. But
even if he stayed, I don't know that he would try and kick things up and be a dissenter necessarily. I don't see him as somebody who's an activist. I see him as somebody who basically has always kind of voted with what he thinks is the right move.
Don't forget, him staying denies Trump another one of his picks. You know, if he really wants to change the course of the Fed, he needs as many picks as possible. In the Wednesday news conference that we're going to get at 2:30, I think that's probably the most interesting thing that's going to happen.
Okay, so I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys think Powell would stay on just to, spite Trump. I don't know that he does, especially under the consideration that they've dropped all the charges against him. Zach Pandal hit it right here. Domino 2 has fallen. Senator Tillis is now prepared to end the blockade of the Fed chair nominee, Kevin Warsh. And remember, these were the dominoes that have to happen to go into the Clarity Act. One, Trump takes the off-ramp for the Fed, takes off-ramp from Fed investigation. He did that. Now this is a big one. The Senate Banking Committee confirms, Kevin, that it looks like it's going to happen. That, of course, gives them full focus on Clarity. So that is a very key thing. It's interesting that the Fed and the new chair are kind of the roadblock right now of what's happening with Clarity. Justin, Goldman Sachs says that Fed chair change to Kevin Warsh wouldn't speed rate cuts. I don't know if I'm in agreement with this. I don't know that this will still be the case. I don't know that the situation is there for a rate cut just yet, but if you listen to what Warsh says often, he's talking about restructuring the way the policy is done and the way that he looks at inflation not being necessarily driven off of tariffs. I think there may be a window here. He may pull a surprise. Just so you guys know, this has been a big issue for Bitcoin in the past. Janet Yellen in 2014, Bitcoin dumped 84. Powell became Fed chair in 2018, Bitcoin dumped 73. And now here we are now. Powell gets his second term, Bitcoin dumped 61, and now we're getting ready to roll into Kevin Warsh. What happens with Bitcoin this time around when a new Fed chair is appointed? Other things to look at right now as to whether or not retail is back, because we'll get into this. And Saylor is kind of the center of this. And what does that mean for Bitcoin? Peter Schiff kind of hits on this thing. I don't know if I agree with anything Peter talks about. I do like gold because just diversify your assets. But he's saying Saylor predicted that Bitcoin would hit 1 million per coin if Master accumulated 5% of the supply. Master now owns 3.9. If buying the next 231,000 has the same impact on Bitcoin's price as buying the last 231, Bitcoin will be below 60K when it hits the 5%. Do you think that is the case under the current macro environment? Because I think the macro environment will flow into this and move these markets in different ways that I think a lot of people are preparing for. Let me go to a clip of another angle for Bitcoin and its trajectory. And this is coming in from Arthur Hayes. Take a look.
How do we get to craziness? How do we get to Bitcoin at 1 million? And it starts with understanding how the Fed votes, which board does what, and how we get to the eventual outcome that essentially yields to yield curve control. Now we are into quantitative easing because Bessent has all this debt he needs to issue. Right now, he's not issuing at the long end. He's afraid. Just like bad girl Yellen. She was afraid of the long end. Buffalo Bill Bessent's afraid of the long end. It's all on the short end, which is why the Genius Act and all the stablecoin regulation is so pertinent, because they need a price inelastic buyer of these treasury bonds or bills at any price. But if they have control of the FOMC, who agrees that yield curve control is necessary to accomplish the political industrial goals of the American Trump administration, then now Bessent can issue trillions of dollars of debt, and the Fed is going to buy a majority of these bonds. And so we get $7.5 trillion effectively of Fed credit creation. That's how much their balance sheet grows between now and 2028. The second piece is this bank credit creation. So we have 3 years, multiply by 3, finger in the air math. And in total, we get to about $15.2 trillion of credit creation. What if we do it when the Fed and the Treasury are working together to print money and send, in their terms, the American economy into Valhalla? We get Bitcoin $1 million plus. And so this is why I'm very confident that the 4-year cycle is not really applicable to this particular cycle. We are in a reindustrialization of a military belligerent, and this is what's going to happen if they are able to gain control of all the levers of monetary policy. And believe me, they are very motivated.
Okay, so I'm a little bit taken back by that clip because it's the first time I saw this one. Sometimes the guys will drop these in on shows, but a couple of things that he hits on there. First, the acceleration would have to happen in the next 2 years because of this administration, the alignment of the current U.S. Treasury and what's happening with the Fed. Now, granted, Warsh will play through this administration and on to the next. So there could be some lag over there. The other thing you have to consider is the implementation of how involved Trump is in Bitcoin. And I say Trump, the family is involved. That makes me think that maybe is there some secret plan here, or is it just right out in the open? We're going to just go all the way in and restructure the entire financial system in the next 24 months. If he is right, then it would be joining the Lynn Alden, and that is nothing stops this train. And the point they're getting at is if you look at federal expenditures in real time, because that's really, you know, this is interesting because Warsh talked about this the other day in the congressional hearing, was he actually addressed the issue. The reason that we're having inflation is because Congress is spending too much money and we're printing too much money. That's his theory. That's a different take than what we've seen on implementations of what has happened from the Powell regime, which looks more toward tariffs and rising cost of other things such as fuel, energy, etc. So that in itself does kind of, I think, align here with what Arthur's saying. I don't know. This would be an unbelievable move if that happens, and if that kind of move on Bitcoin, whew, man, the U.S. yes would take a fairly significant role going forward. Bitcoin ETF though continues its rise. Now 9 consecutive days of inflows, longest streak since September. Another good indicator. However, many people still looking at could we see a little bit of a retracement before we see this blow off top and lining up, because the Fed chair, what's happening in the Middle East, what's going on right now in ETFs and the S&P, timing here is just very unique for all of these things centered around with what's happening with Bitcoin, which is Saylor going in and adding another 3,200 in Bitcoin. One thing to note here is the purchases now made at this almost 78,000 rises the strategy cost basis to 75.5 for every Bitcoin they own. Wow. And, you know, we had the strategy team on, go back and watch that video because we had the strategy CEO in here talking about Stretch and some of the strategies that they are using to implement this kind of acquisition. If you look at it right here, 63 bill, this is one of the bigger bubbles for sure in some time, possibly the most big. Yeah, it's pretty much all the way back into 2024 was the last time we saw these kind of purchases. So continuing to purchase and continuing to build. Ohio State has now got a teacher's pension fund that is disclosed owning 93,000 shares of MicroStrategy. So they themselves are all in on this. Then you've got a shift right now, which I agree with Heidi here, and that is a big change right now in who is speaking at the Bitcoin conference, which is happening literally as I think as we record this. You've got Saylor, of course, Dorsey, but then you go into Paul Atkins, Mike Selig, Eric Trump, and of course Kash Patel. Come on, guys, this is a completely different framework than I think most of the Bitcoiners out there had expected just a few short years ago, and that's where we are, guys. So the question is retail back? Well, here's Novagratz talking about it. Take a look.
U.S. retail has come back, period, end of story, and you see it through the ETFs, but mostly you see it through MicroStrategy. And he is selling stock, and he is selling perpetuals, and he is buying Bitcoin, and his premium is expanding, not contracting. What it means by now, you're 130 times NAV. His MNAV is 130 relative to the Bitcoin he owns. He's almost the only guy that actually has this strategy built in. You know, he had all these other DATs that tried it. They all trade at discounts. But Michael has managed to create this cult of people that trust him and that buy MicroStrategy as their Bitcoin proxy. They buy it as MicroStrategy, and it's working. And that is, I mean, he bought $2.5 billion of Bitcoin last. There's not enough supply to eat up $1 billion a month from $1 billion a week from MicroStrategy.
All right, so a couple of points that Novagratz hit on there, even though I would challenge and say that there are other people out there that have done and are executing on this strategy. One, of course, is, BMNR, and that's Tom Lee, who also has accumulated nearly 5 million in ETH, closing in on 5% of supply. And the real question will be, and I would agree with the fact that Novagratz is saying that Saylor has created a cult following, for sure. I think the Bitcoin conference kind of has elevated that over the years, and the Bitcoin whales have continued to elevate that. It's brought a lot of people on board. The ETFs, Saylor's always the one talking on major news networks. You get that kind of aura built into it. So that I agree with. BMNR and Tom Lee isn't at that level yet. Now, Tom Lee does get called upon a lot, but remember, he's also in traditional securities. He's also doing things, I think, within BMNR that's a little bit different than what Strategy is doing with all their derivative products, which is crazy. So I think it may take some time for him to get to that level. Tom Lee and Bitmine now own more than 5 million in ETH. That's 200,000. If you think about this is their holdings right now, just 200 Bitcoin, 94 million in cash. Beast Industries, which we've talked about that here on the show, and then 8co stake. So 4.21 of ETH. That's the supply. They're getting close because his take rate now in terms of getting more Ethereum is happening faster and larger as he starts to accumulate a lot more. Here it is. The Ethereum Foundation so far has sold 33 million of ETH to Bitmine. So they've been buying from the ETH Foundation. Eventually that's going to run out, and you would be looking at BMNR going to the market. So let's see if this happens soon. And I think the point that Tom Lee has talked about, he thinks this market's bottom is in, which usually means the acceleration. And we've been looking at this for some time, saying once he starts clipping on at 100,000 ETH at a whack, be ready. That might be the lower end of Ethereum. If they are forced, or just because of supply issues, even within the ETH Foundation, if they are forced into open market, the same kind of supply shock could occur on Ethereum as well. So there are some situations that line up very closely with what's happening with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has been, or I should say Strategy has been able to do this because of the variety of products that they have brought to market, which is opening up all these opportunities. Then you compile that with the ETFs, and then of course these two companies that are out there just absolutely trying to pile on in both of these major assets. Let's move over to DeFi right here, because Justin Sun backs AAVE with another 20 million push. Justin Sun says the TRON DAO and HTX are joining to supply another 20 million in USDT to AAVE's core V3 market. This, of course, is big support. You've got Solana, Lily Lu talking about this right here, using their treasury to support the growth of the Solana economy, but also into DeFi. And I think the point that we're getting at is DeFi is getting supported on the fact that we are now seeing over 300 million, which is on the DeFi United.e fund, starting to accelerate. This hasn't been completely moved in to getting these wallets unlocked, but the fact that it's over 300 million right now, I think there is very, very significant support of where DeFi is heading. I love to see this, because this is what crypto really was designed for. The fact that we have a community like this out there pushing for DeFi is great. Another thing you want to consider right now is how stablecoins are playing into this. Here, of course, is the Solana-based stablecoin. Remember when the announcement of Solana and Western Union last year? I will be the first to say, I didn't think it was that big a deal. You see now where they were going with this. They are launching a stablecoin next month. The one thing that you have to consider, and Western Union, the fact that they're doing this and they're doing it this early tells me they are ready for, I think, mainstream of this shift, because it's very possible that the digital dollar, the stablecoin, makes its way into these money market products out there in terms of availability. Because remember, access and distribution is what matters most. Western Union has massive distribution into retail. And I'm talking about every individual across the planet uses this in, I think it's 170 countries. This could be a much bigger deal than I think a lot of people give it credit for. So kudos to Solana for getting that done. Let me go over one other thing. I want to hit on a clip here. This is Trump talking about the era of the United States and why it's so important to be leaders in crypto. Take a look.
We want to beat China at the industry. We're leading with crypto. We're leading with AI. And I really feel I have an obligation from this. As a president, I have to be able to make sure that all of our industries do well. Crypto is a big industry. It's actually become somewhat mainstream. The banks have it, people have it. And I think as the leader of the country, we want to lead in AI. And we're leading China by a lot in AI, and we're also leading in crypto.
Sometimes I listen to him and he never really says anything. Would you do like one sentence, then repeats it 3 different ways. But the fact that he's out there saying, hey, we need all industries to lead around the world, crypto is one of them. I'm glad to hear that, because I think this is it's a signal not only for the world that we're here, but at the end of the day, it really boils down to one thing, and that's Congress has to do it. They have to get in, get this clarity through. That is going to be the big one right here. Clarity Act would become law by June. This says coming in from Novagratz. As the Senate prepares the May vote, so that's pretty much this month. Here we are on April 27th as we record this. Just a few more days, we could start to see activity in the markups, even though we won't know what's in the markup. But starting to see activity in the markup going into the Senate, and of course that changes everything. However, it's not showing up right here on Polymarket as we continue to see pretty much a mid situation right here, hovering at about 47% in probability of 2026 getting the Clarity Act through. We're going to be covering this, a lot of the Fed news, the S&P earnings season. There's going to be a lot happening this week as well as the Bitcoin conference, the Solana event, the XRP event, all happening this week. We'll be covering a lot of that from Vegas. So be on the lookout for that stuff, guys. We'll see you there. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe, drop a comment down below, and also join our free private member group. The link is in the description.